wonder why God gave the Israelites so many laws in the Old Testament? God seemed to have given them some very strange laws that seem to make no sense to us today. Were there reasons behind those laws? Or do you think God was just trying to be a picky dictator, trying to trip them up, to try to think, oh, we have so many laws for you to follow? Based on my research and my study of the Old Testament, I want to present to you today that there was a purpose behind those laws. The laws that God gave the Israelites illustrated His love and protection, but also provided for that bloodline for the Messiah to come. During the minutes I have with you tonight, I want to show you that God gave the Israelites those laws with His laws of shedding of blood, the dietary laws, and also those unusual prohibition laws. First, I want to illustrate the laws of shedding of blood. Without the shedding of blood, there can be no forgiveness. When we sin against God, there has to be retribution. But God didn't want us to give our lives. He set up a way that we could, they could sacrifice animals instead of sacrificing themselves. And what that did was the substitutionary sacrifice just set a precedent that later on Christ would eventually sacrifice His own life instead of us. My second point is that the Israelites were given some very peculiar dietary laws in Leviticus 11. The whole chapter is full of these laws of the different animals that they could eat and could not eat. The land animals, sea animals. And in Fee and Stewart's book, How to Read the Bible for All It's Worth, the foods that were restricted, they say, could carry a lot of disease in the arid climate of the Sinai region, in the land of Canaan. Also, it wouldn't have been economically feasible for the Israelites in that area to try to raise those animals or to try to grow the different kind of foods that they were restricted. The foods also were prohibited by God that were used by the Canaanites in their religious ceremonies. And this was a big deal for God. He didn't want the Israelites to be practicing things that the Canaanites were involved in. The Bible Knowledge Commentary brings out the point that food laws would have reminded the Israelites daily that the Israelites had a unique stature in the eyes before God. My final point is that God provided laws regarding some very unusual prohibitions that protected the Israelites. For example, in Deuteronomy 14:21, you'll read that it says, "Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk." Okay, that's kind of strange. Also, Leviticus 19 tells the Israelites, that they weren't to make different kinds of animals. They weren't to plant two different types of seeds in the same field. They weren't to make clothing out of two different types of material. And why would God tell them such specific things not to do? The reason behind these laws were the practices of the Canaanites that they lived with daily. The Canaanites practiced what's called sympathetic magic. And what this were the religious ceremonies that were practiced by the Canaanites in worshiping Baal. Daily, the Israelites lived amongst the Canaanites, and they were indoctrinated with all these practices. God made it very clear in all these laws that He did not want the Israelites involved in any of those practices. In Michael Harvin's book, The Promise and the Blessing, he expresses that the Canaanite religions degraded everything God stood for. And God's commands were given strictly to separate the Israelites from the Canaanites. And not only for their daily worship of God and not Baal, but to purify that line for the Messiah to come. And as we see, God had the Israelites' best interests at heart when He formed these laws. These laws weren't arbitrary at all. God made these laws for Israelites' benefit, to protect their lives and to protect their well-being daily. Ultimately, for the Messiah to come as well. God illustrated this through the bloodline laws, He illustrated this through the dietary laws, and He illustrated this through these strange prohibition laws. The picture God paints for us through the Old Testament is not one of a dictator trying to say, you can't do this, you can't do that, but one of a father loving his children. He protected them by loving them, guiding them, but daily ensuring that they were doing the right thing. It goes beyond their daily here and now, but their provision for the Messiah. And now that's what I call Father loving his children. Thank you.
Woo-hoo.